I love it this time of year. My son came over today and he said, wow, things have gotten so big. And he was here a week ago. And just in that 1 week, my perennials and everything has just really taken off. Just spectacular growth. So noticeable that, a week later, you can see a difference the way things have filled in. Welcome to the Stone Cottage Garden. This is probably one of my favorite times of year. I love the bulbs. That's great fun, don't get me wrong. But when the dogwood blooms and the lilacs are blooming, Spanish bluebells and the bleeding heart and the lily of the valley and the hellebores are still going, and I can see the promise of the peonies and the lilies. It's just so exciting. And the azaleas, these are just starting to creep out, but let me show you some that are already blooming. Now, on our way back to the azalea, I'll give you a little look here. I've chopped down the forsythia. And the peonies have buds on them. The ants are already arriving. That's a good sign. Peonies and ants just go together. And these peonies look like they're just about ready to open. Now, when I said it was exciting, one of the things that I found extremely exciting was I found several things that I thought were dead, and they're still alive. One of them is right here, and it's tiny, so you have to look. This was a heuchera from last year that, well, you can tell how tiny the leaves are compared to the other heuchera, so it's just a little baby. But I thought it had died over the winter, and it's coming back. Now, I did have another one that was a lighter, well, which one? I can't remember what that other color was, but he's not made it, but that made it. Now, something else in this bed that made it, that fern. This is a fern that had been in a pot for a number of years, and it always kept its leaves all through the winter. And the winter before last, it didn't do well, and last summer, I thought it was dead. I truly thought it was dead, but ever the optimist, just like a farmer, like Will Rogers says, all farmers are optimists, so gardeners are optimists too. I stuck it in the ground just to see what would happen. And lo and behold, it's sending out little fronds. It's going to survive. Now, right here is a broken hydrangea. This one had broken off. I cut it off accidentally. So here's the big hydrangea right here. And I was cutting back. You can see how they'll have what appear to be dead branches, and there was one last year, well, 2 years ago. It's been 2 years. I thought it was dead, so I cut it back, and then I realized it had a little bit of life left in it, so I stuck it in the dirt, cut it into 3 pieces, and the squirrels killed 2 of them, but one of them actually survived, and it's just really taking off now. So I'm gonna have that. Now here is my hydrangea just putting on blossoms. So that's exciting. And here are, these are very pink, but I think they're still a Spanish bluebell, maybe a Spanish pale purple bell. And right behind it are the Virginia bluebells, which is a little native plant. And here is the bleeding heart, which will go on for another 2 months or so. And last week I showed you the beginnings of the Fothergilla. and it's really gone to town. And that's the bedroom window, and it blooms right next to the window, so it's really fun to look out and see. Now right here in front of me, this is the Virginia sweet spire, and he has a similar flower to the fothergill, a little bottle brush, little white bottle brush, but you can see it just barely starting to come on here with a little bit of a pink tip. But there's the Virginia sweet spire, which grows like crazy. And here is an azalea that's just about ready to pop open. I think I might have seen a bloom on it. No, just buds. But over here, you can see through things. Okay, here is the actual Spanish bluebells. Those are actually blue. And here's the ajuga, and next to it, lily of the valley. And there are a bunch of them right there coming out. But here is our azalea, a pale pink azalea. And the daffodils and the tulips are all spent here, but I can see that the foxglove is getting ready to send out something interesting. And the astilbe is doing quite well. And this was all curled up last week. This is a nice big hosta. I wonder if this one's a Francis Williams. But there is so much here, and you notice there's kind of a hole in the middle. That's because I need to divide this thing. So I think I'm going to take some of the little outliers from this guy, or maybe that big hunk right there, and I'm going to put that in my side yard, which is another whole other exciting little tale to tell. And I found some beautiful Rieger begonias that I've planted out. I thought they really echoed the colors from the azaleas. And I'll walk you around to see the other azaleas. There is another azalea. Pink one with more of a red throat. One little lone yellow tulip. And there are still some blossoms. Quite a few blossoms on the epimedium, the bishop's hat. And this is the section where I cut it back. And I don't really see the advantage to cutting it back. It's smaller and it's going to recover, that's fine. But you're supposed to do that, and I just haven't quite figured out why. I guess because I don't know what I'm doing. And behind that azalea, that's a burning bush, and it's got a little pale, kind of chartreuse colored flower on him. And I've got two of them in there, and I think I'm going to have to cut back one of them because it creates such deep shade in there. And this is the forsythia behind the swing here. And I've cut back the other two forsythia, and I think I'm just going to thin this one because, well, you can hear my neighbors. I have neighbors downhill, and this provides nice privacy, so I think I'm going to leave some of it. And here is the phlox. In an upcoming video, I'm going to be talking about phlox and how I get the garden phlox to really perform well. But there's a little bluebell. I have little bluebells kind of all over the yard, so you're going to see that. Now I'm going to back up. And last week, these things were kind of nothing. This is the Solomon seal, and I absolutely adore the little flowers that hang down underneath each one. And they don't last, the flowers don't last, obviously, But these beautiful leaves, these kind of nodding leaves, add a lot of textural interest. And you can see we've got the fern and the hosta, and we've got, I think that's probably I think that's probably a daylily right there. Doesn't bloom. But phlox, and of course the Solomon seal, and then the leaf from this hydrangea. Now, I don't have a lot of color interest here, but at least the shapes are quite different. And these are going to be yellow Dutch irises, but a lot of ferns in here. And you can see this is a pinker azalea, and it's starting to actually open up its blooms. And there is an azalea that's going to town. And you can still see there are just a few blossoms left on my camellia tree. But it's transitioning to much more spectacular with the azaleas here. So you can see that kind of a warm pink, and then you can see over here there's kind of a purpley one that's starting to open up also. And my hostas are really, really going to town here. And there's a fern, and I think I'd like to get another fern in here to create some winter interest, because the hostas all die back, but I've got a lot of different colors and sizes and textures. And these hostas, this particular variety right here, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those all came off of one plant that I divided 2 or 3 years ago. And the original plant was not as big as that one right there. That's probably the largest one. But those 7, and back behind the bench there's another one, so that makes 8. Over here, 9, and 10, 11, 12. I think that's something different. 13, 14, 15, 16. There are at least 16 plants that came out of that one division. They were not real big, but that's what I planted, and they have really, really gone to town. So do not be afraid of killing your hostas. Divide them, they'll be happier and healthier. And this is the best my Japanese painted fern has looked. It's starting to get multiple little plants. I think I should have planted them probably in a cluster of like 3, but instead I planted them all around. But you know, they make their own little clusters. So that's one, and then there's one down here. Now I told you, exciting things happened this week. And things happened in the garden, but things are going to be happening in the garden. And this is one of my most exciting announcements, is right here in this spot. You see we've collected bricks, we've collected river rock, we've collected big rocks, we've put a pile of dirt up. This does have an incline to it, but we thought this, I've told you this several times, we thought this would be the perfect spot for a pond. So my announcement is we actually found a pond. This is going to be a pondless waterfall. So I'm taking you back here to show you this thing. It's much bigger than I expected it to be. This is the 45 incher. It's 45 across, 45 square, and then about 16 inches tall. which I know how big 45 inches, but why does it look so big? This is the base for a pondless waterfall, and this is called an Aqua Basin 45, and I actually found this online. These things are rather pricey, and I got this for a really good deal. We drove up to Pennsylvania and picked it up, tied it on the roof of the car, and drove back, and we got all of the components that we need for probably half of what the kits sell for. So we are most excited about that. And my husband's excited. I've been excited for a couple of years, but now he's excited too, which is really good because it's going to take a lot of strength to dig a hole. So there's the beginning of it. Now this right here, this is going to create some lattice in the front yard for my Lonicera, the scarlet honeysuckle, and it needed something to climb onto, so my husband's going to make me something out of that. So we're excited about that. So once it's done, I will no longer have to apologize for the ugliness of this spot because it's going to be one of the prettiest spots in the garden. Now you can also see there are some more of the begonias that very much complement the color of the azaleas that are blooming, very much that same color. These begonias I picked up at Costco, and it was 8 begonias for $24.99, and that's without a doubt the best price that I've seen on them. But we'll put him somewhere else once the coleus comes in. That's just a little space holder. And everything is growing well here. Our fern and our hostas. Now, this is a public service announcement. This is Spanish lavender. And I saw Spanish lavender at Costco, which is really cheap, right? And they had them look very similar to this. And as I recall, they were either $14.99 or $16.99, something like that. That's what they had. But no. We can do better. These I picked up. I only got 2 of them because they need to go in full sun, and I don't have a lot of full sun, but they'll go in the front of my house. I found these at Trader Joe's for $7.99. So they look every bit as good as the ones at Costco, which are cheaper than the ones at the nursery. So if you are in the market for some Spanish lavender, and this grows zones 6 through 10, which is most of us, and it's full sun, and I can hardly wait because it's a classic thing to have in a French home. And since my house has a little French inspiration with it, I knew I needed a little lavender in there. So I got 2 of the lavenders, and I may go back and see if I can pick up more. But $7.99, Trader Joe's. If you can find a plant at Trader Joe's, that's the way to go. My hellebores, this one's a hellebore that I bought at the nursery several years ago, and as I recall, they were about $35 a piece, and that was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. One of you told me about the hellebores for $11.99 at Trader Joe's, and the hellebores that I planted over on their side of the yard are doing just great, so I'm excited about that. Now, the other exciting thing that happened. So I'll walk you around here. And everything's doing well. This is the path that I uncovered, which was very exciting a couple of weeks ago. And last week, I planted the bare root hostas, and they look pretty pitiful. But hey, look, they're growing and doing quite nicely. And I think I'll do some transplanting. And I've still got some bare spots here, but I'm going to bring some plants. I'm going to divide some plants that I have and plop them around. I'm going to get some of my little baby hellebores and plop those around, and just give it enough time, they'll grow, and this will fill in. And there is the other hosta. This was the Patriot. The first one was the Francis Williams. This is the Patriot. And he's doing even better. So he's doing absolutely great. And the other thing that came out this week is another little Dicentra. It's in the Bleeding Heart family. And he pops up and he's blooming. And last week these were blooming. These are the snowflakes. And this week they're spent, but they're going to seed. And these do just kind of show up all over my yard, as do the hellebores. Now, these are our baby hellebores that I'd shown you before, and I will divide those and put them out. The other thing I planted last week, that's my astilbe, and it was completely underground. I buried it completely, but its leaves are popping out, and I am quite optimistic. I still have one more cluster of 3 that I'll plant somewhere else, but this guy is doing quite well, and his little neighboring hosta is doing a little bit better. Now, here's where we stopped, right at the air conditioner. Whoa, you just got a peek at that. And my husband said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm digging." So I'm digging here, and you probably can't tell, but I've dug down because I need to replace the little pathway, the brick and paver pathway that was taken out when the air conditioner was put in. And as I went to dig out and see how far this went, that's what I found. So this week I have felt like an archaeologist discovering an old civilization. I think what he did was, I think the previous owner might have put his trash cans along here. But you can see it's a combination of bricks and cement pavers. And now that this is dry, I can tell what this is. These are those concrete pavers that look like 8 bricks. And so there are 8 of those all the way to this metal retaining structure or whatever this is. And I suspect that this piece of metal has been here since the house was built in 1942, because it's old, looks old. And this is as far as it goes. Now there's a piece of wood in there. I don't know why anyone would put wood in the ground like that, but somebody did. And I don't know if it was the previous owner or one before that, but I think we could create a little patio. Now you can see this is missing one of the oblong pavers. That's just dirt there. And I don't know, we probably have one that's kind of broken off, and we could create a little angle there. But pretty exciting. This was barren and pretty awful looking a few weeks ago. And I thought this is going to be a huge project, and this ends up being not as big a project as I had thought. Now that piece of metal there is to hold back the carria so I can actually dig without having to climb into the bush. Progress, we're making progress. And my husband also is talking about making a cover for the air conditioner out of trellis. Pretty exciting. Now, I'm going to wait till the sun goes down a little bit to show you the front yard. Okay, the sun's going down a little bit here. So you can see that's where our archaeological dig is occurring. But you can see azaleas starting to bloom. That one right in front of me has huge magenta colored flowers on it, which is very interesting because that's not even my bush. It belongs to the neighbor. It's just growing through the fence, but putting on quite a show for me. So thank you, neighbors. And this one's mine. And when I first moved in, this was kind of a sad looking azalea, and I trimmed on it a bit, and I see it starting to do what the other one was doing. You see how that's putting on one that's sticking up higher than the others? And the way to keep this, I don't like them trimmed so they look like a little ball. That doesn't look very natural to me. But when it starts to send up these tall ones, they get real spiky looking, the thing to do is just to go back in and clip that down at the base, and it'll keep that mounded shape without looking like a sphere or something, which is just not my look. I like things a little more natural, but that is probably the most spectacular azalea in the yard as far as its size. Now, these were my tulips last week, and you can see every one of these little guys, that's where a tulip was. And so I've got tulip petals all over the ground. I still have a lot of daffodils going. Daffodils just last a lot longer, but I also have quite a bit of a mess happening here. These little white flowers are the Star of Bethlehem, which is very invasive in my yard, and I'm gonna have to work on digging those out. I've in another part of my yard where my hardy geraniums are, I have dug them out, and so it's looking a lot better over there, but I need to work on this. Unfortunately, I have to leave my leaves, so that the bulbs will be nourished. Now over here, you can see the neighbor's blue basketball. And this is a really good stand of Spanish bluebells that I think I'm going to start dividing because they are creeping out into the yard. So they go all the way over it here. They are creeping out into the yard. So I think I'll divide some of those and put those in maybe along the side of the house. And I'm still getting little daffodils. Now, this is something. There's a pink azalea on the right, and on the left is a deciduous azalea. And it flowers before its leaves come out, and it's yellow and orange, so the bud looks very orange, and as it opens it looks more yellow. Really, really pretty azalea. Now, azaleas come, the standard evergreen azalea comes in white to pale pink to darker pink to deep pink to red to kind of purpley color, mauve colored. That one looks like it's going to have a little more purple to the one in the back. But the deciduous azaleas have these warmer orange and yellow colors, and you don't see them in the standard evergreen azalea. Now you can begin to see some little leaves coming off. When I first moved into the house, it was very much just a stick, one stick coming up, and so I have been cutting it back so it will branch more, and you can see I still have some dead branches down there, but here are some that are popping out, but I'm trying to give that some shape and definition without being too brutal to it. Now on the far side you can see more Spanish bluebells. The Paris still has a little bit of white on him, and there are some Spanish bluebells up next to the house. They aren't doing all that well. I mean, they're the first ones to bloom, but they've not made a big stand of them. And there are some hostas. That's kind of a good spot for those hostas with the white color. It helps it to stand out a little bit. And these are the purple allium that came from Color Blends. And I've got a lot of buds coming on, but that one's actually starting to open up, and you'll see nestled around it is the foxglove. I think maybe this will be a good spot for the foxglove. And there's my lupin. Yeah, I'll look down in my lupin and see if I see any. Ooh, yes I do. That, ooh, I don't know if I'll get that to focus. Yeah, that's a floral bud on my lupin, just barely starting to come out. But I absolutely love lupin. Over on this side, you can see more of that horrible Star of Bethlehem, but you can tell it used to just be totally covered in here. So I have dug out quite a bit, but these are the hardy geraniums just beginning to open. And more of the Spanish bluebells and more of that red azalea that you saw last week. And up above it, I don't know if you can see that or not, but that is the horse chestnut. Really pretty kind of pink and yellow blossoms that I absolutely adore. And it's just beginning. You can see these at the top have not opened yet. They're enthusiastic, they're getting ready. But down here at the bottom, it actually started to bloom, which is just beautiful. And next door to it, my rose is blooming. This rose blooms clear through till November, and we're keeping our fingers crossed. It has not gotten the rose rosette that took out my climbing roses. And one of my neighbor has one of his roses. I'm like, ugh, needs to go. And it has pretty blossoms on it, but it's infected. But it's a pretty little rose that I very much enjoy. And I think his colors work very nicely with the colors in the horse chestnut. Now we've got two different hostas here. Oh, this one with the variegated leaf, that so badly needs to be divided. I probably ought to do that really soon. Right here, I'm getting blooms for a bud that's a flower that is the shortest bloomed flowers ever. This little bulb, as I recall, it's Camesia. I'll put the actual name of it on the screen so you can see that. But individual flowers last like 15 minutes. They really go fast. So it's like, oh, it'll be really interesting. Not as interesting as I would have hoped, but it's here. It's paid for. Love that. Horse chestnut. This is the flowering almond, and the flowers are all crispy and ready to go, but it does have a nice little leaf, but tucked into it is my rose. You can see what color that's going to be, and it's got buds all over the rose, and he's really going to put on a show. Oh, here's one pretty close to opening in the next couple of days. That'll come out, but buds all over it. Excited about that. And another thing I pulled out, it's fun. These are a wicker wattle. I think it's W-A-T-T-L-E. I found these, as I recall, it was on Etsy, and they are made in Poland, and they were rather expensive if you got a small order, but if you ordered a whole box of them, it wasn't that much more expensive. And they don't last forever because they are natural, and so they do decay. So I just got a lifetime supply because it wasn't going to cost me that. For twice the amount of money, I can get enough to last me for the rest of my life. And they did ship from Poland, and I really, really like them, and they're really good at keeping things off of our pathway. We need to keep our pathway clear because we actually do use it for Daniel's wheelchair, and I need to keep everything on the other side of it. And the reason it's not lots of traffic and lots of wind, the reason it's not any closer is there is cement, and I can't smash it into the cement. So that's where the edge of the cement is. And there's that little false dragon head coming up there, or maybe I can tuck some of it back before it gets any bigger. But here is close up on these Spanish bluebells, and this stand of them just gets bigger and bigger every year. And the bouncing bet, which is the plant right back in there, tends to be floppy, and so this wattle holds it back, and it's perfect solution for that. Now, here is our mock orange. That will bloom before too terribly much longer. I unfortunately have the kind that doesn't have the wonderful smell. I thought, it can't be a mock orange. It doesn't smell all that great. But from what I understand, there is mock orange that does not have a fragrance, and that's the one I happen to have. And let's see if you can see my neighbor's dogwood, and there, this dogwood has a little bit of a pink cast to it, and we've had to keep it trimmed up high. It originally had some low branches, but we had to keep them off the walkway. So this one is trimmed up high. And down here, popping up, is the Baptisia. And you can see the buds starting to form on the Baptisia. And that will bloom before in the next few weeks. And remember I told you you wouldn't be able to see my house once this tree leafed out, and sure enough, it's really hard to see the house once the leaves come out. But there's the lilac. This is the purple lilac. And this is the meadow rue. And he's got blossoms on him. And I've got some lilies coming up in there and a bunch of daffodils. And it's the oak leaf hydrangea. And there is his blossom that's coming on. And the spirea still has a little bit left. Can you see that thing that I chopped down? That was the forsythia. He's gone. And he'll survive. Don't worry, he will survive. I'm going to cut it back some more, but you can see it growing lower, and that's what I want. This is the May apple. Now, here's what's interesting. when you see two of them growing together, in the crotch, you get the little bloom. And so you can see, here's two, but if it grows as a single, like this guy's a single, he's not going to get any flowers. Single, single, pair, pair. And every time you see the pair of them, you'll get the blossom. And then that blossom will turn into a little fruit about the size of a small marble. That doesn't taste very good, but that's okay. I'll show you this one. These are the little chartreuse flowers on the burning bush. And there's a little coral bell actually blooming. Now, I do want to point this out. Years ago, like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I bought a package, one of those bare root things from Costco that had ferns in it. This is the first year that fern has had any size at all. Before it would get like 1 or 2 fronds on it, and now it's finally getting some size. So that has taken quite some time. Okay, now this started out as those hostas. Remember I showed you like 16, 18 hostas that came all off of one plant? This was it. So we took out the middle of it. We thought we were digging the whole thing out, but we missed that side and we missed that side. So everything in the middle came out. And that's where those plants came from. And this is the snowflake. Here is bleeding heart. And I wanted to show you one other thing that I thought was dead. And it wasn't. It was alive. I don't know, a month or 2 ago, I broke off the oak leaf hydrangea, broke off a branch. And there wasn't much going on. And I cut it in 2 and stuck it in the ground. This one looks like he's not going to make it. And that's kind of the way it is. But I literally stuck it in the ground. And this guy is going to survive. And when he gets a little bigger, I'll probably keep him in a pot, keep an eye on him for the next couple of years. And then I'll stick him in the ground and I'll have an oak leaf hydrangea for free. Now here are my geraniums. Again, got the geraniums 8 for $24.99. Without a doubt, that's the way to buy bedding plants. And I planted up a couple of them. Forgot to show you one thing. I forgot to look up. The sun is going down, so that works out just fine. Now, these are my window boxes, and they are planted with 5 calibrachoa each. So it has 3 of the purple and 2 of the yellow. It's what I do every year. I do the calibrachoa because they can grow just about anywhere. They can handle the shade, they can handle the sun, they're fine. They also don't mind being dry, which in the cocoa mat liners, they tend to get dry even if you water them every single day. They tend to dry out a little bit. So these do just fine. They have in years past actually survived the winter sometimes. They did not this year, but I bought for this window and window on the other side. So you can see, there they are. Now, you know, the general rule of thumb is you want a filler, a spiller, and a thriller. Well, I cannot grow anything tall because the only way to water these is to open the window. And since those are casement windows, they open out over the plants. So I need the plant to stay low. These actually will fill the box and they will spill over the edge. But I cannot have anything that's tall in the boxes. So this is the perfect solution. Now, remember I talked about buying plants at Costco, and I was paying, hold still. I was paying about a little over $3 per plant. I am very, very opinionated about the Calibrachoa that I want. It's also called Super Bells, I think. These are proven winners. I went to the nursery to get them, and I paid $7.99 for each one. So over twice what I pay for a comparable bedding plant at Costco. So that's why I buy them at Costco, because nobody's sending me these things. Nobody's supplementing me. This is out of my pocket. And the reason I pay that much for them is sometimes I can find them a little bit less. I don't know what their bedding plants are going to be this year. They might be $6.99, $5.99, or $6.99. They're still expensive at the box stores. But the reason I get them at the nursery is because, first of all, I want the color selection. And I don't have the color selection at the big box stores that I have at the nursery. And I can get them when I want to get them. So to me, it's worth it. Yeah, I spent $80 plus tax on these two ridiculous window boxes, but I love the way they look. They will look more and more spectacular as every week passes, but sometimes you pay for exactly what you want to get it when you want and what you want, the color you want, and the variety that you want. So it was worth it to me to spend the extra for the things that, like the begonias and the pelargonium geraniums. I'm gonna go cheap, and doggone it if I can find something at Trader Joe's for $7.99. So I spent the same thing on those big plants that I spent on each one of these little bedding plants. So anyway, thanks for joining me in the garden and for our exciting week, and look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.